Hey, what's up guys, Rip here. So today we're going to go over some updates regarding the ongoing collective work refusal that several English voice actors are participating in. And we're going to see their shift away from Twitter to their echo chamber on Bluesky, where their reaction to a lot of different developments are getting increasingly desperate and angry, especially given the recent news that 3 more of these voice actors participating in the work refusal have been let go by Hoyoverse. So before we get into the most recent stuff, let's do a really quick rundown of everything that's happened so far. So SAG-AFTRA is a union that was masquerading a collective work refusal as a legitimate strike in the name of giving AI protections to union and non-union members. Of course, people would discover it was simply a collective work refusal. However, the people participating in it, like this individual, did not provide any voice work for 6 months with Hoyoverse, and of course, they eventually let them go, and they were replaced by Jacob Takenashi, a Tokyo-based voice actor who was not aware of the collective work refusal and also had no obligation to do so. And in response to him taking this position, dozens of his own peers lashed out at him. They called him a scab, a traitor, diabolical, a clout chaser, a bad person. They even made weird comments about his financial situations. It was a lot. He got harassed genuinely by his peers. You can see an example of that here with Kaylee Mills, who called him diabolical and said, if you need money, take the role uncredited, and this looks like an easy grab for clouts. Meanwhile, of course, this individual was still working on Hoyoverse products at the time, but they had their own technical reason that they were allowed to. Very hypocritical. But to this individual's credit, she has come out and recently publicly and privately apologized to Takenashi, saying the comments, especially about his financials, was too far. And if you want to accept that or not, at least this is someone who's trying to correct the course here. But others involved with the dogpiling have only doubled down, including Karina here, who is the voice of Paimon in Genshin. She said this in response to the original announcement from Takenashi, and she's been incredibly active on Bluesky to a pretty almost impressive degree with the amount of posts and reposts that she does. We'll look at some of that in just a second, but recently I found it very interesting that she reposted this message saying Jacob was never harassed. He was criticized for his actions, but never harassed. Do you see the layers of gaslighting at this point? They gaslit you about the collective work refusal, masquerading it as a strike. They gaslit you about the reasons for it. They claimed it was all about AI protections, but in the end, we know it's just because they wanted to flip Hoyoverse into a union member as a union set of contracts, and they wanted to get more people and more roles for the union. And now they're gaslighting you about something you can see with your own 2 eyeballs, okay? Everyone saw the harassment and dogpiling from his own peers as a result of taking this position. He was, in fact, harassed. It wasn't just criticism. And you can see how these people flip-flop how they view criticism versus harassment. Pretty much any video on YouTube or even social media posts disagreeing or pointing out the inconsistencies and the lies of their collective work refusal, they're labeled as harassment, not criticism. In this video, for example, I guarantee the subjects of this video would consider this harassment, even though I think this is just fair criticism about the many inconsistencies of this collective work refusal. But like I said, Karina has been busy on Bluesky. I guess because of the work refusal, she has a lot of free time because just like look at this feed. This is 1 day. So far, we've scrolled through 1 day of posts and reposts, and it just goes on and on and on and on. It's actually crazy. You can see down here, 2 days ago, we just went through 2 days of posts. But there's other news involving voice actors, in particular the collective work refusal, that's getting a lot of attention on Bluesky and amongst English voice actors. You can see from a voice actor here, Sean Laraway. He says this: according to the Hoyoverse website, Zenless Zone Zero's 1.7 update has replaced the English voice actors for 3 different characters. You can see it's confirmed here in the notes. And based on the reaction from these voice actors, it's very clear that these 3 voice actors providing these roles were participating in the collective work refusal. And of course, when you don't work, the natural consequence is typically you're going to be fired, so this is not too surprising. But we saw more reaction to this thanks to people like Little Kuribo. Okay, you might remember him from one of the previous videos. He said this insane line in response to Takenashi denouncing any sort of threats being made in support of him. And oddly enough, Kuribo here comes back and says, you need to publicly state that us voice actors aren't bullying you. And basically, if anything bad happens to these voice actors, it's all on you. Unless you basically get rid of any sort of guilt or responsibility that they were supposed to have for attacking him. A classic bullying mentality here, trying to make the literal victim of a harassment campaign come out and say, I'm not being bullied. Very strange, but they've also been very active on Bluesky. And you can see they responded to the previous post saying these actors deserve better. And then down here they say on a certain subreddit, they're happy about this and saying Hoyo had no choice, but happy about striking actors, or being happy about striking actors getting fired is inexcusably messed up. Hoyo always had a choice. Now, of course, I think it's an oversimplification of this whole process. Like, yeah, they're going to replace these voice actors. They don't have a responsibility to the union, and this is the route that people chose, and they put their careers at risk or their jobs with Hoyoverse, and they got laid off. I don't think it's too surprising. Now, I'm going to say this, and it relates to a lot of the localizer drama with anime and manga, where some people who are abusing their position to make ridiculous translations are at the threat of being replaced by AI. It's the same thing here with these English voice actors. I am not sitting here and applauding and being excited and elated for these people losing their jobs. However, I just don't feel bad for them because they took on this risk and this was one of the consequences they faced. And the fact that anyone in this scenario is perplexed why some people are cheering on these firings, they're not paying attention. They're not self-aware, because the voice actors who engaged in this dogpile and this ridiculous behavior over the last month, they made fools out of themselves and they made their cause something people don't want to support anymore. The optics were really bad. And now people are going to celebrate them losing their jobs because they don't like them. They don't like what they're seeing on social media. I don't think it's too surprising that people are celebrating this sort of stuff. But also, just like with Corina, they're reposting a lot of stuff that is quite inflammatory. Here's one post from another voice actor they shared saying, fans, regardless of what you're a fan of, I know that you want more of the things you like, but understand that when a strike is happening, if you're getting more of that something and suddenly the entire cast is replaced, you have to understand that it's coming at the cost of people's livelihoods. And then this one's very interesting. They reposted, what I will say is that getting all of your information from sensational YouTube videos, short videos with half of the information or third/fourth hand from other fans who have gotten their info from these sources is only going to harm the industry more. So I find this a very interesting tactic. They're trying to say basically anyone who's criticizing this movement has no idea what they're talking about, and only qualified people like the supporters of SAG-AFTRA can actually give you an opinion that is a trustworthy one. And also these people criticizing this collective work refusal and how it's being conducted and the people doing it, oh, they're the ones harming the industry, not the voice actors who are ruining their own movement by acting like lunatics on social media. And here's the thing, okay? There are technical aspects of this that are very complicated with the whole SAG-AFTRA, and really just kind of like the bottom line of what it means to be in that union. But the very simple outlook on this issue is very simple. The optics are very simple. There is a movement that these voice actors were controlling the narrative of for a long time. And then as soon as people start to poke at it and start realizing inconsistencies, these voice actors go mask off. They start harassment campaigns. They start acting like petulant children. And guess what? People look at that and say, wow, I don't want to support whatever your movement is. That's really how simple it is. You can look at the voice actors and how they're behaving, and it tells a very clear story, and one that shows that a lot of people don't sympathize with their cause anymore because of stuff like that. Now, continuing on, Little Kuribo would say this: if you see the usual grifters and anger harvesting content creators getting behind the actors have no right or reason to strike Hoyo titles, the union is a scam, etc. argument, I'd ask those of you who are rational to consider how steeped in ignorance that take must be to catch fire that quick. And down here they say, ask yourself if you trust the people striking for months or the people doing everything in their power to undermine that in the span of a few weeks. This is very close to self-awareness. It's not the grifters, the usual grifters who are disrailing this whole movement. It's literally the voice actors. They completely crumbled their own movement by acting like a bunch of lunatics. I mean, you look at their social media accounts, it's like Arkham Asylum, dude. These people are tweeting every single minute of their day. They're still fuming over this, and they still won't accept that, maybe we shouldn't have treated Jacob Takenashi that way and handled this a little bit better and been a little less misleading with the goals of this collective work refusal. Instead, they're just dismissing all criticism as that of the product of grifters and stuff like that. And you might notice a common theme throughout all of this, not just with English voice actors, but other topics on this channel like anime and manga localizers, games journalists. They all have a burning hatred of YouTubers. They don't want to accept anything they do, any opinion they have. They call them grifters, they call them reactionaries, all that stuff. They are fuming in jealousy. And in this case, they're really mad about it because they've been controlling the narrative on this work refusal from day one. And now over the past month, because people have covered this situation or talked about it even on social media, it's put cracks into the movement. And now people are seeing all these people and their goals for what they really are. And these people are fuming about it. And now they're trying to downplay all the people doing coverage by labeling them as grifters and anger harvesting content creators. Now, continuing on, they try to answer someone's question about basically why even work on non-union jobs if you're a union worker, because that's what many of these participating work refusal parties were doing with Hoyoverse. But he says this, because a lot of actors want to be in the union, and union actors actively flipping those projects from within is a common way that happens. And that's very interesting because that's what people were saying from the jump, that this was a way to try to flip Hoyoverse into a union set of contracts. And people were told they were crazy and stupid for saying that stuff right from the jump. And that's exactly what they're saying right here. Yes, the goal was very obvious. They wanted to flip Hoyoverse and get more people in the union, which would mean more opportunities for them and more money for the union. Like, we all understand that the way these people are going about it was deceptive and also pretty manipulative. And down here they say, there's far more jobs for people who are outside of the union. Again, you're just convincing people they shouldn't join the union at this point. You don't have to deal with any of these crazies. You don't have as much responsibilities. You don't have the initiation fees. You have more job opportunities. Like, I don't know. There are benefits to joining the union, but in this case, they're not doing a very good job of presenting their case. And then we have this where people are basically saying, I'm tired of the Yu-Gi-Oh tab on Bluesky, basically just being Little Kuribo posting about unions over and over again. And they say, legitimately, I'm sorry if my posts about the strike are frustrating to view on your timeline. My spouse is striking, as are many of my friends. As a result, many of them are struggling. I am speaking out because I have seen people for months now misrepresent what they are struggling for. And this is the other thing that people just don't want to see over and over again. And I saw it on many different pages of these voice actors. They are constantly talking about how much they're struggling, especially financially, and they have like fundraisers to pay their rent and stuff like that. And like, yeah, it sucks, you're struggling, but this is the route you took. First of all, you went into voice acting. That is already a pretty underpaid route to go. And that's a fair thing to point out. Any voice actor says they don't get paid enough. I think they're on to something there. But if you're going to refuse to work, I think you kind of lose the ability to like weaponize the fact that you're struggling or use it as a way to garner sympathy at the very least, because you chose to do this. And also, I see these people who seem to have a lot of free time on their hands, not doing anything else to try to alleviate some of the pressures they're going through. I don't know the ins and outs of their personal lives, but it seems like they have an awful lot of time to be on Bluesky, like an insane level of time they spend on this app. But continuing on, the problem is with other posts, they're just so tone deaf. And again, they're trying to spin some sort of a narrative that all their critics are dumb and basically a bunch of wingnuts. Okay, so you have this person saying, I want to speak honestly. I think the shit around Jacob Takenashi got way too out of hand way too quickly. I still believe he's a scab. I firmly believe he knew about the strike before he took the job and that his post was in terrible taste, but the fallout has been effed. Yeah, thanks to you guys. Again, they're trying to say, I think it went too far with Jacob Takenashi, and then they call him a scab, they call him a liar, and say his post, celebrating his new role, was in terrible taste. Do you see why people don't want to agree with you people? You can't even admit that things went too far without basically trying to get these jabs in at Takenashi. And down here, they're talking more about this stuff, saying, that being said, the people who are actively spreading misinformation need to effing stop. Professionals have talked at length about these topics, only for y'all to ignore them and listen to YouTubers with their own agenda who construct false narratives. It's like anti-vaxxers. They're calling YouTubers who dare to criticize their narrative anti-vaxxers. That's the levels they're going to here. And let's look at some other posts. This voice actress says, never ask a woman her age, a man his salary, or a Hoyo fan how unions work. Ah, yes. Mocking your own base here. You're mocking your own customers and people who are trying to support your industry and make them look like they're stupid because they don't understand the deep intricacies of this strike. No, they're seeing crazy behavior on social media and they don't want to support it anymore. And you have other posts like this from that Sean Laraway that shared the recent layoffs. They said this, you are not owed niceness / politeness from me or anyone if I/we keep getting death threats from Genshin cells. I certainly don't owe anyone gotcha-splaining, misinformation, a customer service, have a nice day attitude. So yeah, you can go whatever route you want. You can start popping off on people on social media, but see how that's worked out so far. It's not worked out very well. And referring to Genshin players as incels is just pathetic behavior. This is such a Bluesky post dismissing all of your critics as these nasty incels. But let's look at one more thing here. Another reason why people are just cringing whenever they see this stuff, and a conversation about the work refusal. This person says, the solution is so simple, a caveman can figure it out. And yet ignorant folks will just blame the VAs actively striking and protesting to have basic human rights. Protesting to have basic human... They're missing basic human rights? What human rights do they not have? And also they go on to say, you know, this is all about guaranteeing that their voices won't be used by AI. We're past that. We know that's not the main goal. We know that everyone involved is protected in one way or another, especially if they're in the union. And yeah, this was the attempt to get more people on board with their narrative. But of course, we know at the end of the day, and as we've seen even in this video, this was about flipping Hoyoverse. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. That's the latest set. That's probably a very small chunk of what's actually going on. Bluesky is just overloaded with pretty much everyone involved in the situation, and they are tweeting and posting like their life depends on it. So I'm sure this is only the surface of what's out there. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.